I came home late that evening, expecting the usual routine, the warmth of familiarity, the scent of home-cooked food, maybe even a lazy hug from my wife, Emily. But the second I stepped through the door, something felt off. The air carried a strange chill, not the kind that comes from an open window, but the kind that seeps into your bones when something is wrong. Emily was there, sitting on the couch, her face illuminated by the cold blue glow of her phone screen. She didn't look up right away. When she finally did, her eyes met mine with a hollow stare, none of the warmth, none of the familiarity. Just a glance, a forced acknowledgement, like she had been expecting me but not exactly looking forward to it. I shrugged off the feeling, told myself I was overthinking things. It had been a long day. Maybe she was tired too. I slipped off my jacket and tossed it over the chair by the door, but as I did, an uneasy knot tightened in my chest. The room itself felt different. Too quiet, too still. Normally, there would be some background noise. A show playing on TV, a podcast she was half listening to, maybe the clinking of dishes in the sink. But tonight, there was nothing. Just silence, thick and suffocating. Over the next few days, little things started adding up. Emily had always been chatty, filling the space with casual updates about her day, gossip about work, or some random thing she read online. But now, she barely spoke at all. When she did, her words felt rehearsed, clipped. More like she was fulfilling an obligation rather than actually engaging in conversation. Then there was her phone, always in her hands, always absorbing her attention. It wasn't just that she was on it more often. It was how she handled it. The way she would angle the screen away when I walked by. The quick flicker of her eyes whenever a notification popped up. The times she would tuck it behind a pillow like she was trying to hide something. At first, I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe she was just distracted. Maybe she was going through something she didn't want to talk about. But as the days stretched into weeks, the feeling gnawed at me, growing sharper with every odd little moment. It wasn't just her phone. It was the way she moved. The way she would straighten up when she thought I wasn't looking. The way her gaze darted toward the hallway as if she was waiting for something, or someone. The stiffness in her body whenever I got too close, like she was bracing herself for a confrontation that hadn't happened yet. I didn't need an argument or a confession to tell me the truth. The truth was in the details. The subtle shifts in routine. The nervous tension in her hands. The silence where laughter used to be. I didn't say anything right away. I didn't accuse her. I just watched, took note, let the pattern unfold in front of me. Because deep down, I already knew. Something was happening. And I was going to find out exactly what it was. Once I started paying attention, the changes became impossible to ignore. It wasn't just Emily's quiet demeanor or the way she hovered over her phone. It was the way she carried herself, the way she moved through the house like a stranger, careful and deliberate. Mornings, which used to be filled with sleepy conversation over coffee, had turned into a series of cold, mechanical movements. She would wake up before me, slipping out of bed quietly, like she didn't want to risk waking me. I'd find her in the kitchen, phone in hand, staring at the screen with a blank expression. The second she noticed me, she'd put it down, too quickly, too deliberately. At first, I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe she was just stressed. Work had been demanding lately, and I knew she had been feeling overwhelmed. But then, there were the nights. She started staying up later than usual, always on the couch, always scrolling. I would go to bed alone, but when I'd wake up in the middle of the night, I'd find her in the same spot, still staring at her screen. The light from her phone reflected off her face, making her look distant, like she was somewhere else entirely. And then there were the unexplained absences. Emily had never been the type to make sudden plans. She was a homebody, preferring a quiet evening with a book over a night out. But lately, she had started going out more often. A quick errand that took hours. A last-minute girls' night that seemed to come out of nowhere. She didn't give me many details, just vague, dismissive answers. And when she came back, there was always something different about her. A slight shift in her mood. A distracted smile. The smell of cologne that didn't belong to me. I started tracking the changes. Not in an obsessive way, at least, that's what I told myself. But I kept mental notes. What time she left, how long she was gone, how she acted when she came back. And I noticed something else. Whenever I walked into a room, she would flinch. Not a big, dramatic reaction, but a small, almost imperceptible stiffening of her shoulders, like she had been caught doing something she wasn't supposed to. Her phone, which she used to leave lying around, was now always with her. Even in the bathroom. Even when she went to shower. That was when I knew something was going on. And it wasn't just my imagination. I wasn't the jealous type. I never had been. But this wasn't about insecurity. This was about facts. Patterns. A series of tiny, undeniable moments that, when put together, painted a very clear picture. So, I decided to dig a little deeper. I started paying closer attention to her routine, to her habits, to the little things she didn't realize she was revealing. I noticed how she started dressing differently, subtly, but noticeably. A little more effort in her appearance. New perfume. Clothes I hadn't seen before. I noticed how she guarded her phone like it was a lifeline, her fingers tightening around it whenever I was near. And I noticed how, despite all these changes, she tried to act like everything was normal. Like I wouldn't see it. Like I wouldn't figure it out. But I had already figured it out. I just needed proof. And soon enough, I was going to get it. I knew something was going on, I just didn't know how deep it went. But that was about to change. One night, Emily said she was going out with a friend, a casual girls' night she barely mentioned in passing. Normally, I wouldn't have thought much of it, but things weren't normal anymore. Something in her voice was off. Too light, too rehearsed. Like she had practiced saying it, like she was trying too hard to make it sound casual. I played along, acting as if I believed her. "Have fun," I said with a smile. But the second she walked out the door, my mind was already racing. I waited. Not long, just enough time for her to get comfortable, to assume I wasn't paying attention. Then, I did something I had never done before. I checked her location. She had left her phone logged into our shared account a long time ago, and while I had never felt the need to use it before, tonight was different. I pulled it up, expecting to see her at the restaurant she had mentioned. She wasn't there. Instead, her location showed an unfamiliar part of town, near a quiet residential area I didn't recognize. I felt my pulse quicken, but I stayed calm. If she was lying, I needed to know the full truth. So, I got in my car. The drive felt longer than it actually was, my hands gripping the wheel a little tighter than usual. When I arrived, I parked down the street, far enough that she wouldn't see me but close enough that I had a clear view. Her car was there, parked outside a house. Not a restaurant. Not a bar. A house. The pieces snapped together in my mind, sharp and undeniable. I waited. Minutes passed. Then an hour. And then, I saw her. Emily stepped outside, and she wasn't alone. A man followed her, his hand brushing against her back as they walked to her car. They were laughing, comfortable, familiar. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just watched. Watched as she leaned in close. Watched as he touched her like it was the most natural thing in the world. Watched as everything I had suspected unfolded right in front of me. And then, as if the universe wanted to make sure I got the message loud and clear, she kissed him. It wasn't a brief, hesitant kiss. It wasn't the kind of mistake you could explain away. It was slow. Familiar. The kind of kiss you give someone you've kissed 100 times before. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay in control. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I needed to be smart about this. So, I pulled out my phone and took a picture. Not for revenge. Not for blackmail. For proof. For the moment when she would inevitably try to deny it. Because I knew she would. They always do. I watched as they said their goodbyes, as she slipped into her car and drove off, probably thinking she had just gotten away with it. She had no idea I was watching. No idea that her lies had just run out. By the time I drove home, I knew exactly what I was going to do next. And this time, I wasn't going to sit back and watch. This time, I was going to make sure she understood exactly what she had done. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of Emily's slow, steady breathing beside me. She had come home late, slipping into bed as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just spent the evening wrapped up in someone else's arms. I wanted to confront her right then and there. I wanted to shake her awake, shove the evidence in her face, and demand the truth. But I didn't. Because I wasn't looking for an argument. I was looking for justice. So, instead of letting anger cloud my judgment, I stayed quiet. I waited. I planned. By morning, I had a clear strategy in my head. Emily went about her routine like nothing was wrong, sipping her coffee, scrolling through her phone, giving me half-hearted smiles in between texts. It took everything in me to act normal, to smile back, to pretend like I didn't already know everything. But deep down, I was already setting things into motion. I started small, checking her phone when she left it unattended. She had gotten careful, setting a passcode when she used to leave it unlocked, but that didn't matter. I had watched her type it in enough times to know the sequence by heart. Once I was in, I didn't have to dig far. Her messages were exactly what I expected. Long conversations with a contact saved under a fake name. Sweet words. Plans. Photos. I took screenshots of everything. Forwarded them to myself. Evidence. Next, I started tracking her movements more closely. I already knew her patterns, but now I had timestamps, locations, and proof. And then came the final setup. A few days later, Emily told me she was going out again. Same excuse, just meeting up with a friend. I smiled. I told her to have fun. And the second she left, I got in my car and followed her. I stayed far behind, careful not to be seen, watching as she drove to the same exact house. The same man. The same betrayal, playing out like a sick, repetitive movie. But this time, I wasn't just watching. I was recording. I filmed as she walked inside. As the lights dimmed. As the shadows in the window shifted. There was no denying it now. No excuses. No, it's not what it looks like. I had her. And that was all I needed. Because this wasn't just about catching her in the act. This was about the perfect revenge. I had everything I needed. Messages, photos, video proof. There was no way for her to talk her way out of this. But I wasn't interested in just confronting her. That would be too easy. Too predictable. No, I wanted something better. I wanted her to feel it. To experience the betrayal the way I had. To have the rug pulled out from under her in the most unexpected way possible. So, I waited. I let her think she was still getting away with it. I let her keep lying, keep sneaking around, keep playing the role of the devoted wife while secretly leading a double life. And then, the perfect opportunity presented itself. One night, Emily had been out drinking. I knew because she texted me, slurring her words even through the screen. Staying out a little later. Don't wait up, Redheart. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because I already knew exactly where she was. And who she was with. Hours passed, and I waited. I knew she'd had too much to drink. I knew she wouldn't be able to drive. And sure enough, around 2 a.m., her location stopped moving. She and her little boy toy had passed out. Together. In his car. I didn't hesitate. I drove straight there, finding her and her lover slumped over in the front seat, their bodies twisted awkwardly in a drunken mess. They were out cold. And that's when I decided to end this on my terms. I carefully opened the door, making sure not to wake them. They reeked of alcohol, their breaths heavy and slow. Emily stirred slightly but didn't wake up. Good. I took her phone. Then his. And then, without a word, I got into the driver's seat and drove off with them still inside. It wasn't kidnapping. Not really. I wasn't hurting them. I was just relocating them. Somewhere far away. Somewhere inconvenient. Somewhere they wouldn't forget. The drive was long, but I enjoyed every second of it. When I finally stopped, we were miles outside of town. A quiet, desolate stretch of road, surrounded by nothing but trees and darkness. I parked the car, stepped out, and left them there, phoneless, stranded, and completely unaware of what had just happened. By the time they woke up, they'd have no idea where they were or how they got there. And I'd be home, sleeping soundly in our bed, knowing that when Emily finally made it back, she'd have to explain herself. Not just to me, but to everyone. Because by the time she returned, the truth would already be out. The texts, the photos, the videos, all of it would have been sent to the people who needed to see it. Her friends, her family, her boss. There would be nowhere to hide. No way to rewrite the story. The perfect wife. The loving, devoted spouse? Gone. Replaced by the truth. And I'd be watching every second of it unfold. By the time Emily and her lover stumbled back into town, the damage had already been done. She must have woken up groggy, confused, her head pounding from the alcohol and the sudden realization that she was in the middle of nowhere. No phone. No way to call for help. Just her and her little boy toy, stranded on a deserted road, trying to piece together how the night had taken such a drastic turn. I imagined the panic setting in, the way she must have frantically searched for her phone only to realize it was gone. The arguments that must have followed, him blaming her blaming him. By the time they finally found their way back, everything had already unraveled. The moment she stepped into our house, the look on her face said it all. She knew. She knew before I even opened my mouth. Her phone was sitting on the kitchen counter, right where I had left it. Unlocked. Open. The evidence displayed in perfect clarity. The messages. The photos. The videos. All neatly compiled. All forwarded. She didn't ask who I sent them to. She already knew the answer. Her parents. Her friends. Her boss. Everyone who mattered. There was no room for lies anymore. No fake tears, no last-minute excuses. She tried, of course. They always do. It wasn't what it looked like. I was drunk. It was a mistake. I let her talk. Let her stumble through every tired excuse, every desperate attempt to rewrite reality. And then, when she was done, I simply slid the divorce papers across the table. Already signed. Already finalized. This wasn't a discussion. It wasn't a negotiation. It was over. She stared at the papers, her hands trembling as the full weight of the situation finally crashed down on her. Her job, gone. Her reputation, destroyed. Her home, no longer hers. I had taken everything she thought she could keep hidden, and I had exposed it all. She didn't cry. Not at first. I think she was too stunned to react. Too overwhelmed by the sheer finality of it. But then, as reality really set in, the tears came. And I didn't care. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even satisfied. I was just done. Without another word, I stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked out the door. By the time she picked up her shattered pride, I was already gone. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Thank you for visited my YouTube channel. Your support, likes, and comments truly inspire me to create even more engaging content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You're a part of this amazing community, and I'm thrilled to share my stories with you. See you in the next video on YouTube.